Welcome to Chat Like a Native, the deep dive designed to help you communicate with, well, real confidence and clarity. Today, we're unlocking something pretty essential for, I think, every conversation, but especially in professional settings. It's the hidden language of effective meetings. Now, this isn't about drilling grammar rules or, complex vocabulary. Nope. We're diving into something much more powerful, I think, and uh, incredibly practical. These simple strategic phrases we're calling signposts. Think of them like your secret roadmap. They can transform you from someone maybe just watching a conversation to an active kind of in-control guide. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have tools to not just participate, but to actually lead and shape discussions. And that makes you sound, well, truly fluent, decisive, and just naturally confident. Okay, so let's unpack this idea. Meeting signposts, what are they really? At its core, they're like essential road signs for conversation. Short, clear phrases. They tell everyone where you're going, what's coming up next, and importantly, when you've arrived at your destination. They're kind of your secret weapon for clear communication.
Yeah, and it's fascinating why these little phrases have such immense power, especially, I think, for intermediate English learners. First off, they frame the journey. Imagine stepping into a really fast-moving discussion. Without these markers, it can feel like trying to navigate through thick fog. You feel a bit lost, maybe hesitant to speak up, and you can fall behind fast. Signposts, though, they turn that kind of messy back and forth into a clear route. You know where it's starting, how it's progressing, and where it's supposed to finish. And that clarity is just absolutely crucial for avoiding confusion and, maybe more importantly, for building your confidence to jump in.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that feeling. Being lost in a fast discussion.
Yeah.
Feels like a relief just knowing there's a structure you can kind of lean on.
Exactly. And beyond just framing things, they proactively manage expectations. Everyone in the room gets a sense of what topic is coming next, roughly how much time you'll spend on it. So no big surprises, right? Which fosters this shared sense of order. For an intermediate English learner, this isn't just about being efficient. It's about significantly reducing that cognitive load. When you know it's coming, you actually have a moment to prep your thoughts, maybe think about key words and feel less on the spot. That really lowers anxiety and boosts your ability to participate more spontaneously.
That's a huge point, yeah. The mental energy saved just by knowing what's ahead
Yeah.
must be immense.
Precisely. And they also empower you to protect time. You can politely but still firmly pause a tangent or maybe rein in someone going on a bit long without completely, derailing the meeting's momentum. And that's a key skill for any fluent speaker, really, gently guiding things back on track.
I've definitely been in meetings that could have used a good time protector. It's not just efficiency, it's about respecting everyone's time, isn't it?
Absolutely. And maybe most critically, these signposts help create psychological safety. When the transitions are clear, when the path forward is visible, it's just far easier for everyone, and especially non-native speakers, to understand what's going on and feel comfortable joining in. It just lowers that barrier to participation. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it ultimately helps you lock in outcomes, making sure discussions actually turn into clear, actionable results. So what does this all mean for you? Well, it means your contributions can lead to tangible results, not just, more talk.
That's the dream, right? Getting concrete results from a clear conversation. Okay, so here's where it gets really practical. We put together a kind of phrase-heavy guide you can start using, like today, to instantly sound more in command. Let's call it your meeting map. It's full of essential phrases for pretty much every moment of a conversation.
Right, we can start right at the beginning. How to open strong and set those expectations. Instead of just a casual, so what are we talking about today? Good. You can take immediate control. Try phrases like, okay, let's get started. Today's goal is to decide on the new marketing campaign strategy. Simple, clear. Or maybe, by the end of this session, we should have a clear next step for the product launch and an owner assigned. You can also set time boundaries right away with something like, we have 30 minutes for this discussion. I'll make sure to keep us on time. Oh, these phrases immediately establish control, they communicate clear goals, and they show you're prepared to lead.
I can already feel the shift in dynamics just hearing those. It sounds incredibly purposeful, very organized. That instantly builds trust and respect, I think.
It really does. Then, as you move through your conversation, you need what we call forward signposts. These keep the discussion flowing smoothly from one point to the next. For instance, maybe after wrapping up a point, you could say, okay, before we move on, any final points on the budget proposal? Once that's done, you transition with, great, let's shift our attention now to the client feedback. Or, to manage both time and topic, a simple, Right, next up is the project timeline review. We'll spend about 5 minutes on that. These phrases make you sound natural, in control as you transition between topics. They help avoid those awkward pauses or abrupt
Yeah,
shifts.
like a conversation conductor, kind of ensuring everyone knows the next movement. But what happens when you need to change perspective or the group's focus? Sometimes discussions get stuck down in the weeds, or maybe they stay too high level.
That's exactly where these zooming in, zooming out phrases are just invaluable. If the conversation's too broad and you need to get into specifics, you could say, okay, let's zoom in on the root cause for these performance dips for just, say, 2 minutes.
Hmm.
And conversely, if things are getting bogged down in too much detail, you might gently interject with stepping back for a moment. The key issue here seems to be maybe the lack of cross-functional alignment, not just the individual tasks. And to connect back to the bigger picture, use something like, at a high level, this decision will significantly impact our quarter-end deliverables across multiple teams. These phrases demonstrate that analytical thinking and your ability to guide the focus strategically.
Right, so it's not just about guiding the content, but also gracefully managing the people in the room. That's often the trickier part, isn't it? How do we use signposts for that, navigating human dynamics without creating friction? Especially when we want to sound confident and fluent in English.
Yeah, this is a critical area, and signposts are incredibly powerful here. For managing people respectfully, you can invite participation from quieter folks with something like, Amina, you've been particularly close to this project's data. What's your view on these projections? If you need to interrupt gently to stay on track, which can feel a bit daunting for an English learner, try. I'm just going to jump in quickly here so we can keep to our time. Can we perhaps come back to that point during our next discussion? To balance participation, you might say, okay, we've heard a lot from marketing. Let's maybe hear from someone who hasn't spoken yet from the sales team. And if you need to disagree politely, which is definitely an art form, try something like, I see it a little differently. My concern is that the risk is actually maybe understated here. Can we double check the latest market data? These empower you to participate actively, manage those who might dominate, and voice dissent constructively, all while keeping things respectful and sounding confident.
Those are fantastic. They offer a way to speak up and steer things without feeling aggressive or, awkward. I imagine clarifying and checking understanding is also huge, especially for an intermediate English speaker, making sure everyone's truly on the same page, no details lost in translation.
Absolutely crucial. For clarifying and checking understanding, simple phrases are golden and often overlooked. You can say, just to clarify, when you say agile methodology, do you mean we're adopting Scrum or perhaps a hybrid approach? Makes it specific. Or, so, just to be clear, the scope of this project explicitly excludes the mobile app development, correct? These are so important for an English learner to ensure that mutual understanding and avoid costly miscommunication later. It gives you that moment to process and confirm.
Right. And what about when disagreements pop up? Because they always do. Those can really derail a conversation if not handled well, and maybe feel even more challenging when you're not speaking your native language.
Oh, they absolutely can. When you're handling disagreement without derailing, the key is to guide the group towards a constructive next step, rather than letting the conflict just escalate. You could offer something like, okay, it seems we're not fully aligned on this path yet. We have maybe 2 options. We could decide now with the data we have, or we could time box a quick follow-up session to gather more information. Another approach is to suggest, right, let's list the key assumptions we seem to disagree on, and then maybe discuss how we might test them. That turns conflict into a process. And then there's the indispensable tool of the parking lot.
The parking lot, yes. A classic for a reason.
It's incredibly effective, yeah, and really a mark of an organized communicator. You can say, that's a really important point, but it feels maybe a bit off topic for our agenda today. I'll add it to the parking lot, and we can revisit it at the end if time permits, or maybe in a separate discussion, or, we'll likely need a separate session with the finance team to go deeper into those cost implications. This lets you stay on track without dismissing valuable ideas. It validates the idea, but prioritizes the current chat. Makes you look organized and efficient. It's a nuanced skill, really.
Okay, so we've guided the conversation, managed the people, hopefully gracefully.
Yeah.
Now, how do we make sure all that great talk actually turns into concrete action? This is where so many meetings, frankly, in any language, tend to fall short.
That's absolutely right, and it's why clear wrap-up phrases are so vital. When you're summarizing decisions and owners, be really explicit. Leave no room for ambiguity. You might say, okay, quick recap. We decided to implement the new customer onboarding process by next Friday, November 15th. Sarah owns it, with support from David for the content creation. Super clear. Or, action items so far. 1, draft the project proposal. That's John, deadline EOD Tuesday. 2, schedule the client follow-up, Maria, deadline tomorrow. This ensures accountability and clarity, which is really a hallmark of truly effective communication.
So it's not just we decided to do X, but who decided what, by when, and crucially, who's responsible for actually making it happen. That's the step that often gets missed, I find.
Exactly. And closing with clear next steps is just as important. Something like, okay, to close, here's what will happen between now and our next check-in on Friday. I'll circulate the meeting notes and action items within the hour. Or, thanks everyone for your time. If anything changes regarding these action items, please ping me before, say, end of day tomorrow. And then there's what we sometimes call the decision lock. This is just a simple 3-part loop. Proposal, confirmation, commitment. It's designed to make decisions really stick.
Can you give us a quick example of that loop in action, just to see it play out?
Sure. Imagine a situation. Someone proposes, okay, given the recent error spikes in our system, I propose we throttle traffic to 80% for the next 24 hours to stabilize performance. That's the proposal. Then the crucial confirmation step. Right. Is there any strong objection to that plan or any unforeseen risks we haven't discussed? Get that buy-in. And then, once confirmed, the commitment. Okay, we agree. Throttle traffic at 80% for 24 hours. The operations team owns the implementation of this change by 2 p.m. today. See? Proposal, confirmation, commitment. And this raises an important question for you listening. How often do your discussions truly end with such clear, actionable commitments? This loop is how you make sure they do.
Okay, this next part, I think, is a real game changer for sounding truly fluent and natural in English. It's about those tiny little words that actually make a huge difference in feeling like you're truly, well, chatting like a native.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how these discourse markers, that's the technical term, are like the subtle gears in your conversational engine. They're small words, often just 1 or 2, but they guide attention, they signal your intent, and they show the relationships between ideas. They just make your speech flow much more naturally. They kind of fill in the gaps and provide a cohesion that's really characteristic of native speakers.
So, not just words, but conversational cues, you mean?
Yeah.
That help everyone follow your train of thought.
Precisely. For starting a turn or transitioning smoothly, you can use things like, so, right, or okay, little starters. When you're contrasting ideas, try, however, that said. Or, on the other hand, signals a shift. If you're explaining or maybe reframing a complex point more simply, in other words, or put simply, are perfect. And for summarizing or drawing a conclusion, you'll often hear, so to recap, in summary, or the classic bottom line is. Using these shows confidence and, bonus, it gives you a split second to gather your thoughts too.
Yeah, the key thing seems to be starting your turn with one of these markers plus an action or intent. Like,
Yeah.
So to keep us on track, let's move to the next item. Or, okay, that's one perspective. However, we also need to consider the long-term cost. That's that fluent, natural communication in action. Right, we've covered a lot of ground today. Quite a bit, actually. But sometimes it's the little tweaks, isn't it, that make the biggest difference in feeling confident and truly fluent. What are some quick wins or pro tips you have for our listeners, things they can start applying right away?
Well, let's tackle some common problems head on. For instance, if you often find yourself stuck in those endless updates where no decision ever gets made, a powerful signpost fix is something like, okay, we've now heard 3 updates on the project. To move forward and make a decision, we probably need a clear recommendation from the team and maybe a deadline for implementation. Pushes for action. If a dominant speaker is consistently taking over, let's just pause there for a moment. I'd like to make sure we hear from Fatima and Noor on their perspectives, as they've been really integral to this part. Brings others in. And for a challenge, many of our intermediate listeners face maybe low engagement from non-native speakers in a group. A great fix is, okay, I'll summarize our discussions slowly now, then perhaps we'll do a quick round robin, just 1 sentence each on your key takeaway or maybe a question. This directly supports your confidence and participation by creating a really safe and structured space to speak up.
That's brilliant. It creates that opening that feels safe, feels structured, and reduces that anxiety about just jumping in cold. What about how we actually say these signposts? Does pronunciation matter beyond just, knowing the words?
Oh, absolutely. Pronunciation matters a great deal for clarity and impact. And it's about more than just individual sounds. Think about chunking your speech. You pause briefly before and after the signpost. For example, say it like this. So, pause, to recap. Pause will ship on Friday. That little pause gives it emphasis, signals a transition. You also want to stress the keyword within the signpost or your statement. The main risk is capacity. That emphasis guides the listener. And use appropriate tones, typically a falling tone for decisions, like we'll defer the upgrade, downward inflection, versus a rising tone for checks, like are we agreeing to a pilot, upward inflection. These subtle vocal cues add significantly to your authority and clarity. They're often what makes someone sound truly, well, native.
It's those little details, yeah, those nuances in delivery that really elevate your communication from just understandable to really impactful.
Indeed. And finally, just keep it short in practice. Signposts work best when they're brief, usually like 3 to 8 words. Don't try to make them overly complicated. Encourage yourself to practice reading them out loud. Maybe even record yourself just to build that muscle memory and confidence. Remember, you don't need perfect grammar to control a meeting or a conversation. You need short, confident signposts used strategically at the right moments.
So after all this discussion, what does this all mean for you listening?
Well, fundamentally, mastering these simple meeting signposts empowers you to be a more confident, clearer, and frankly, more controlling participant in any conversation, not just formal meetings. It's about shifting your communication from maybe passive observation to active direction. It really allows you to chat with that native-like ease and influence. The goal isn't just to understand English, is it? It's to use it to lead and influence outcomes. Just imagine for a second not just following a conversation, but actively shaping it, guiding it towards clarity and towards action. What kind of tangible impact could that have? On your professional growth, maybe, on how others perceive your contributions, and even just on your overall sense of agency and confidence in any discussion, whether it's at work or just in your daily life.
That really is a powerful thought to leave you with. So here's your challenge for this week. Pick just 3 or 4, maybe even just 2 of your favorite signposts from this deep dive. Actively try to integrate them into your conversations, professional or casual, doesn't matter. And pay close attention to the difference. How do you feel when you use them? And maybe notice how others respond to your clearer, more confident communication. We think you'll be amazed at the impact.